Well, hello. I'm Janet Marana, Executive Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to my Just Ask Janet program. And today is a historic day for me because I am so excited beyond belief that I have a U.S. Senator joining us on the program today. Can you believe that? Taking the time out of their busy schedule, coming away from the chamber to votes and all that to come on camera with me. Well, the senator that is joining me today is Senator Daines from the great state of Montana. He has a 100% pro-life voting record, and he also founded the pro-life caucus of the Senate, which, by the way, you know, the House has had a pro-life caucus for decades, headed up by Congressman Chris Smith. And all of these decades have gone by, and the Senate just didn't seem to have a pro-life caucus. Well, Senator Daines, he's the man who got it started. We're going to talk to him now, and we're going to find out about the pro-life caucus, but we're going to also find out some key battles in the Senate that we're going to need your help on. So let's now watch our interview with Senator Daines. Well, Senator Daines, thank you again for spending time with us today. And I wanted to just ask briefly, so many pro-lifers don't understand that there is a pro-life caucus in the Senate. There's been one, as you know, in the House for decades, but they don't know about the Senate. And I know I've asked for years, why don't we have one? You were instrumental in getting it going. Tell us quickly about that.
Well, I just started asking the why questions. Why don't we have a pro-life caucus in the United States Senate? And then I didn't get a good answer. So without a good answer, I started it. It's as simple as that. And I think it's very important that we bring pro-life senators together who also want to make sure we are funding staff that wake up every morning here on Capitol Hill that think about life. Because as you know, there's so many bills floating around, policy items that directly affect life. And I want to make sure we have somebody waking up every morning that thinks nothing else but about how do we preserve and protect life.
And so, you know, for the day-to-day activities on the Senate, so that people can understand, what does the pro-life caucus actually do? Do they meet? Or does the staff get together to help? Like what actually happens day to day?
Right. Well, think about this for a moment. There are approximately 10,000 different pieces of legislation floating around Capitol Hill in any given moment. There are thousands of different very unique policy provisions that can be stuck into appropriation bills, either spending bills, that could have a big impact on life, for example, like the Hyde protections. So this is really about working in the innermost sanctum of the United States Senate, primarily starting with staff members, because as you know, here in Washington, D.C., staff equals policy. And somebody has said the United States is run by a bunch of 25-year-olds. What they mean by that is a bunch of 25-year-olds up here on Capitol Hill who are oftentimes the staff who are writing a lot of legislation. And so we start there with very close relationships connected with us through email, the phone, and face-to-face meetings with staff, ensuring that we are, one, being proactive in stopping legislation that would have a direct impact on life, but also being on the offense with things like the amicus brief for, of course, the big case coming before the United States Supreme Court that we prayerfully hope will overturn Roe v. Wade.
Well, Senator, as you know, we coordinate the quarterly meetings of the National Pro-Life Leaders. So I just want to point out how helpful the Senate Pro-Life Caucus is. And Andrew from the staff there comes regularly to our meetings to update us. Really, really helpful. The leaders appreciate it. And, we are more effective in our pro-life work when we're hearing the up-to-the-minute updates in regard to what the pro-life senators are doing. And that's a great service that the caucus provides. So we appreciate that.
Well, Father, you just identified, of course, our secret weapon in Andrew Guernsey. And that's the staff member that wakes up every day that is funded by our pro-life caucus. And what's very important, as you pointed out, Father, is that he is coordinating with all the great pro-life groups around the country and on Capitol Hill to make sure we're all unified and strategic and thoughtful in terms of what we're doing up here to protect life.
And, well, as is often said, the best defense is a good offense. And we want to talk for a few minutes here about what's going on the pro-life front, both in terms of offense and defense. You recently introduced a new bill that I'd like you to tell our audience about, having to do with protecting life on college campuses. Tell us, Senator, about that.
Well, it was a great moment here last week when we had the Students for Life with us for a press conference. And this is a bill I'm working with a couple of my House colleagues, Congressman Roy and Congresswoman Meeks, Congressman Miller, that is working on this bill that ensures that we stop what's going on in California. So here's the background. In California, they have passed a law that will require universities to provide abortion pills for women on campus across all their universities. This literally will turn college campuses into abortion clinics. It's very, very dangerous, of course, because what this does to babies, but it's also what it does to women, because about 7% of women who have a chemical abortion, these abortions by pills, require surgery. And so what my bill does, what our bill does, is it says if a university wants to go down that path, then the federal government will cut off all federal funding to that university.
That's so that's so great. We'll be certainly asking our viewers to get behind this, to communicate with their members both in the House and in the Senate, and see this eventually come into law. And then, of course, there's a lot of defense going on. Janet, you wanted to ask about that.
Well, we know, unfortunately, the House just passed those two appropriation bills where they got rid of Helms and Hyde, and we know now it's coming over to the Senate side. So can you explain to our people what can we do to help people like yourself, the senators, fight this so that we can, I want to say, like, abort the bill or kill the bill, these two bills?
Yeah, well, we anticipated this might be happening. And remember, we were fighting this battle when President Trump was in office as well, where I circulated a letter that we gave to President Trump that said simply, if there's any spending bills that remove the Hyde protections, this is decades old protections that said simply, taxpayer dollars cannot be used to fund abortion. That's been the law of the land here for over 40 years. Sadly, many of my Democrat colleagues want to remove that protection. And so we put together a letter, and we had virtually every Republican senator sign that letter, and we gave it to President Biden. We've given it to Nancy Pelosi and to Chuck Schumer, putting them on notice as if you remove the Hyde protections, you're not going to have Republican senators supporting budget bills going forward. So this is going to turn into a major battle as we're looking at these budget bills coming into the fall.
And so, from what I understand, all right, it will come. Well, it goes to the committee, and they're going to give those Senate bill numbers. and then it's going to come to the floor for a vote. And, we really, what I think we need to do is tell our people, whether you have a pro-abortion senator or a pro-life senator in your state, you should still call them and tell them you want to vote no taxpayer money for abortion, both domestically or overseas. So will this help if we flood, light up the switchboard at the Senate offices about this issue?
Absolutely. And I will tell you that when you have constituents making those phone calls, sending those emails, writing those letters, flooding the zone, as we say, that does influence and can change a senator's decision about a particular piece of legislation. Remember, the numbers up here on Capitol Hill in the U.S. Senate are the narrowest of margins. We have 50 Republican senators. We have 50 Democrats. It's literally split right down the middle. And we just need a couple of our colleagues here, like a Joe Manchin, a Kirsten Sinema, think like a Bob Casey. We've got some Democrats that will be more sympathetic to our pro-life constituents who are making those phone calls. But back to what you said, Janet, it shouldn't matter where your senator necessarily stands on the issue of life. You want to make sure your voice is heard. And I just want to implore everybody at this moment as we head into the fall to be picking up those phones, writing those emails, making your voice loud as it relates to ensuring these Hyde protections remain in legislation. Remember, this is a 70% kind of issue. In other words, when you poll it nationally, over 70% of the American people would say, yeah, we don't want to have taxpayer dollars going to fund abortion.
And so a follow-up thing to point out is that Biden, when he was a senator, this was always, it used to be a bipartisan thing, to keep the Helms and the Hyde. We know all through the Clinton 8 years, Obama 8 years, right? Like you said, it's over a 40-year tradition. So Biden, when he was a senator, he voted to keep in Hyde and Helms, correct?
Absolutely. It's absolutely correct. And we've seen this shift has just occurred within the last 6 months. It was really after this last election where I think shockingly we see that my Democrat colleagues believe they have some kind of mandate from the the more radical elements of the pro-abortion movement, and sadly they've almost taken control and they've got held hostage most of the Democrat senators. And this is why we've got to fight back, because, again, they're out of step with where their constituents are back home in most cases. So this is really a radical shift in terms of these Hyde and Helms protections that we've not seen in over 40 years.
Well, Senator, we know you have to get back to the business of the Senate. Just as a final point, you are so encouraging to us all the time. Would you give a word to our audience, so many of whom they're active in our prayer campaigns, they support Priests for Life, they're out there on the streets, in the abortion centers, and they're calling their representatives in government. Could you give our pro-life people a word of encouragement as we go forward in this battle?
Well, we should be encouraged, and I want to encourage you all. And I thank God for the priests, those members of the Catholic faith, that I think of all the different faith groups across our country. It's been our brothers and sisters in the Catholic Church that have been the most steadfast, with unwavering resolve to protect life. And I will tell you, I am so grateful for that. But we have to just keep the fight going. As you know, the fight to protect life, it never ends. There's never going to be a time we can just wake up and say, well, we finally arrived. That's not the case, because history tells us there's always these elements that want to basically go after those who are most vulnerable, whether it's the elderly, whether it's those who are disabled, or whether it's the unborn. And so I want to thank you for the prayers. Please keep praying, and please keep acting. We need your help like never before. And be praying too for that Roe v. Wade decision to be overturned by the United States Supreme Court. That's going to be a big case coming up this fall.
And we just received today the print of our amicus brief for that very case. And so many pro-life, I think we're reaching a record with this case of how many pro-life briefs are being submitted. So, and thank you for your work on this as well.
Well, I think if I could just say too, if I could just add, That's a great reason to be very encouraged. I know there's things going on in our country that would be discouraging, but remember, we've got a moment in time, a moment in history, thanks to the great work and effort so many that are watching this today, fighting to change the Supreme Court, to change the circuit courts, and now we have a moment to overturn Roe v. Wade. That should be very encouraging. That's the fruit of a lot of labors, a lot of prayer, and a lot of action by the pro-life community.
Well, I'd like to just, Senator, please tell all your colleagues there in the Senate, the pro-life guys that and women, that we are behind them, the whole pro-life movement, 100%. We appreciate the battle you're in there, because I just can't imagine what it's like walking the halls with such a hostile environment about protecting life. So we also keep you and lift you up in prayer, and all your colleagues, and we want to thank you for all you do. Like you said, get up every day, walk into those chambers, and fight for the unborn. So thank you so much, and for the women too, to protect them.
Well, those are very kind words. Thank you.
And thanks for your time today. God bless you, Senator.
God bless.
God bless you.
Boy, Father Frank, what an honor to have a U.S. Senator on our program. I mean, and such 100% pro-life voting record senator. It couldn't be
Well,
better, right?
yes, he's one of the best. It really is special to be able to have when we have a lot of guests on these programs. But this is one of the key leaders in the country for this movement right now in our government.
That's right. And we know how busy he is, and they're always running for votes and this and that.
Oh, it's
and
intense.
He said,
especially in the
don't
Senate.
worry, we'll give you a few minutes.
Oh, no. 15 minutes of a senator's time is very,
huge.
very, very
It's
special.
really, really
very
huge.
special, yeah.
And so, at the end of our interview, you held up our brief here.
Well, yes, he brought up the Supreme Court case
Supreme Court case.
as well he should, because it is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, occurrences right now in the pro-life movement.
Right. So let's remind everyone, it's Dobbs, the state health officer, Mississippi. It's the Mississippi case,
Yes.
right? Versus the Jackson Women's Health Organization.
Which is the only remaining abortion mill in
the
Mississippi.
whole state of Mississippi.
Right.
And basically the thrust of this case is this question of viability, right, Father?
Well, that's right. Viability was artificially inserted in the Roe v. Wade decision as the point at which abortion could be prohibited by the states if they wanted to.
Right.
Why viability? Nobody knows. It wasn't in the briefs. It wasn't in the arguments. It wasn't in the laws of Texas or Georgia that were being challenged in Roe
So
and
in
Doe.
writing
So
the
it just got
decision, they
thrown
just
in. Yeah,
dropped it in.
like a lot of what Roe v. Wade has in it. It's just thrown in without any clear rationale. And it has, over these decades, become a sort of a dogma in the way that the courts have handled abortion cases, whereby if a state, or of course it would apply on the federal level too, were to prohibit abortion prior to viability, the courts consider it automatically unconstitutional. Now, there is absolutely nothing in the Constitution that warrants thinking that way, but this is the way the courts have dealt with it. And if the courts establish a pattern, as they have, of striking down laws that protect babies before viability, what does that do to governors and state legislators that want to pass these laws, or even pro-life groups that might want to introduce them? It discourages them. It says, well, why should we take the time, the effort, the money, go through the battle of crafting and debating and passing a law and then defending it if the courts are just going to strike it down automatically?
Right.
This has been the situation up to now. Mississippi had the courage to prohibit abortion before viability. Their law says 15 weeks. Right now, by the way, at the time of Roe v. Wade, viability was considered about 28 weeks. Now it's more like 22 weeks.
That's right.
So it keeps going down, and it will continue to. But the point is that Mississippi had the courage to say, okay, 15 weeks is the limit. We're going to protect babies in the womb after that. It was challenged, of course. The Court of Appeals struck it down. Mississippi appealed to the Supreme Court.
Wow.
And the Supreme Court accepted. We didn't think they were going to accept the case. And they were pondering it for a long time as to whether they should accept it.
And there actually were several questions, and they
they chose one.
One.
When a party brings a case to the court, they're asking various questions. Now, one case can have multiple questions that they're asking the court to resolve.
Right.
In this case, they brought 3 questions before the court. The court settled on one, which is really the best to resolve of the 3. And it is this: is a prohibition on abortion before viability automatically unconstitutional. Now, I really can't see them, and I think that all the pro-life attorneys would agree with me. I really can't see them accepting that question and then turning around and saying, yes, it is unconstitutional automatically. Because again, especially with this court now, the makeup of this court,
Right.
again, there's nothing in the Constitution about abortion.
That's right.
So how can you say it's automatically unconstitutional to protect babies from abortion before viability? In fact, you can't even say it's automatically unconstitutional to protect babies from abortion, period. Much less to say, oh, before viability. There is nothing in the Constitution.
Well,
So
I think this gets back to even the intention of our founding fathers, which was our government was not supposed to be top down, meaning the federal
right.
kind of enforcing things on the states and
Right,
the courts.
right.
It was meant to be of the people, by the people, for the people.
Yes, the federal.
So if the people of a state
Yeah.
want to protect babies at 15 weeks or even heartbeat bills,
Right.
they should have the right. If the people of that state pass that law, the governor signs it into law in their state,
Yeah.
then they should be able to have that law.
Exactly.
Guess what? If you don't like it, move. Go to another state or go get your abortion elsewhere.
Or make
But
your case,
Right.
make your case to the legislators, make your case to the public. So more than ever, as I mentioned to the senator, more pro-life groups than ever are filing these briefs.
right.
You know, individuals
So what did
and
our
groups.
how
can-
was I know this women from Silent No More are the testimonies are in here, certain ones,
That's the bulk of it, yes.
and that's the bulk of the brief is that, isn't it?
Mhm.
And,
Right. Because remember, part of the argument here is that the reason that the state is justified in prohibiting abortion
Mhm.
is because A, of course, the protection of the life in the womb, but B, the protection of the life and health of the mother. And this is where our brief in particular shows the negative impact of abortion on the mothers. That's what the Silent No More campaign does overall.
That's right.
And that's what the argument that we are reinforcing before the court. We say, of course, Mississippi has the right to do this. So does every state, because this is harmful to women. Even Roe v. Wade acknowledged that's one of the interests of the states,
Right.
to protect the health and lives of women.
Now, the senator said this is the most hopeful to overturning Roe.
Overturning Roe, right.
So, based on the decision, if they decide the correct way, would it in fact automatically just overturning Roe, or is it just going to kind of dismantle it a little?
Oh, I think it's going to drastically weaken it. One of the approaches the court takes to big controversial issues, you can look at how it's dealing, for example, with religious liberty, is that rather than come out at a certain point in time and say, okay, this decision that we've relied on for such a long time is now overturned, rather than that kind of a lightning bolt approach, what they tend to do is over the course of multiple decisions over multiple years, they will make decisions that will weaken that decision that they're trying to get rid of. You understand what I'm saying?
So it's kind of like chipping away at
chipping
it.
away, and more than chips. I mean, it's substantially weakening it, because remember, the court has already done this. They have already weakened Roe v. Wade over all these years. People think of Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, the companion case,
Right.
as the abortion decisions.
Mhm.
There are dozens of abortion decisions that the court has issued. So, and as the decades have gone on, they've moved farther and farther away from the way Roe v. Wade decided the whole issue. So what we're going to see, I think, with this case and others that will follow is a much more substantially weakened Roe v. Wade. The court's been doing this with religious liberty. There's a case called the Lemon case, and it's been like the test, for religious liberty cases that the courts have used for decades.
Right.
And again, this was a decision. This is where you sometimes hear the phrase of the excessive entanglement of the state with religion, right? And so if there's excessive entanglement, this is where you have these ridiculous decisions, like you can't set up the Christmas creche in the city square, we got to take down that cross because it's on public property. Ridiculous. That has nothing to do with what the founders of the Constitution meant about church and state. But the point is that the court has been dismantling and weakening the Lemon case to the point now where legal analysts will say, oh, it's dead. The Lemon is no longer the test. Well, where is the decision from the court that says Lemon is overturned? right? It's not. So I'm thinking they're going to do the same kind of thing with Roe, and this case now, which will be decided not until probably the spring of 2022.
Yeah, probably June. We'll get the
Probably.
announcement, right.
I think this case is going to go a long way in doing the same thing to Roe that the court did to Lemon.
And so, in fact, basically, if we win this Mississippi case, then there are a lot of heartbeat bills that have already been passed in several states. And we know in the lower courts, they're starting to fight those heartbeat bills. This would save the heartbeat bills, wouldn't it, Father?
Depending how they rule, it could.
It could,
because again, one of the arguments there is, it's pre-viability, and again, some of these judges in the lower courts, are under the impression, if it's pre-viability, it's unconstitutional. If this court now in this decision says, no, it's not automatically unconstitutional, what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to indicate, well, then what standard do these lower court judges use to decide
these cases,
whether to uphold these laws or not? Right. If you're going to take away this notion that, viability, well, what standard are you going to use? Of course, they've put this undue burden standard.
Well, in that
but it doesn't mean anything. The problem is they put forth these terms. Like Justice Thomas, I love listening to him.
Me too.
He'll say, the court says this, the court says that. What does it mean? And he puts his hands up. He says, nobody knows.
Right.
And it's true. Nobody knows.
So, Father, we have a lot to pray about this case. So people should go to Supreme Court
Victory.com.
Right.
There's a prayer campaign going on there that we're spearheading. They could read our amicus brief and a whole bunch of others.
Right.
They can read the brief of the state of Mississippi itself. That's the main document. What's the argument they're making to the court? And they can get the latest news about what's going on.
And then finally, to keep up with the Senate and those appropriation bills, they have to go to stopabortionnow.org, sign up for our action alerts.
Right.
And
then we'll tell them when to contact their senators
and what to do
and what to say and so forth. Yeah.
Well, brothers and sisters, thank you for joining us on Just Ask Janet. And of course, I want to thank Father for joining me today on this exciting episode to have a U.S. Senator. Thank you, and God bless.